ولكنهم لم يغتالوا تصميم شعبنا وهويتنا وكوفيتنا الفلسطينية التي ما زالت تزين شباب فلسطين وبنات فلسطين في داخل فلسطين وخارج فلسطين حتى نقيم دولتنا الفلسطينية وعاصمتها القدس إن شاء الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Our singer called Jamil Ramoni. He will join us in this troupe. والآن مع فرقة جميل الرموني. أنا أول مرة أسمع بلش الحفلة كان عم بجرب. كثير صوته حلو، إن شاء الله تستمتعوا فيه. تحياتي.
مساء الخير لكل الضيوف كلا بلقبه واسمه. شرفتوا الحفل، تسعدني أشارك هالحفلة الرائعة اللي كل سنة تتكرر. بداية نترحم على شهدائنا الأبرار، الشفاء العاجل لجرحانا البواسل، والفرج العاجل لأسرانا وأسيراتنا. ألف رحمة على روح قائدنا ومعلمنا أبو عمار. بدي أحكي كلمة بالله شوي، بدي أحكي كلمة. أنا لأني عايش في البلاد بشعر في الثمار اللي بقطفوها جمعية يونايتد هوليلاند فان اللي إلنا 3 سنين بنتعامل معاها. الشكر الموصول لكل يد بتساعد هاي الجمعية بداية، لأنه بنعكس على أبنائنا وعلى أطفالنا وعلى شعبنا الفلسطيني سواء كل المؤسسات الفلسطينية. وبنلاحظ هذا الحكي والفعل في جامعاتنا وفي كورونا للمساعدة اللي بتقدمها جمعية هوليلاند فان. كل الشكر لكل شخص يستطيع أن يقدم هذه المساعدة لأبناء شعبنا، لأنه واجب وطني، واللي ما بيبني في بلاده ما بيعمر في بلاد الغربة. أهلا وسهلا فيكم، خلينا نفرح ونبسط مع بعض. ألو فو 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 ميتها دوالي والله يا صوت الريح يا صوت الريح في الكرب دوالي حسبت الكون موسيقى وطرب يا داري يا داري مهما طال البعد لاجي قالوا دمعي على فرقة الأحباب على الخد لاجي لاجي ما عدت أعيش أنا ما عدت أعيش أنا في اسم لاجي لابد أعود على ديار الأحباب يا داري مهما طال البعد بعدي على العهد يا فلسطين بعدي يا داري يا داري مهما طال البعد بعدي على العهد يا فلسطين بعدي أمانة 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 والله أمانة لا تفتح الأبواب بعدي أمانة طول ما احنا ما نسيتك يا دار أهلي ما نسيتك يا دار كني بنسى دمي وجرح ما نساكي يا دار ما نسيتك يا دار أهلي ما نسيتك يا دار كني بنسى دمي وجرحي. بدنا نسمع كف حلو فلسطيني مع بعض جميعا. يلا نسيتك يا دار أهلي نسيتك يا دار كني بنسى دمي وجرحي بنساك يا دار نسيتك يا دار أهلي نسيتك يا دار كني بنسى دمي وجرحي. يلا ليل ليل يا فلسطيني يا فلسطيني يا دار أهلي بنسى دمي وجرحي بنساك يا دار نسيتك يا دار أهلي نسيتك يا دار أهلي بنسى دمي وجرحي بنساك يا دار. والله راجع عبلادي وراجع عبلادي بعد الغربة راجع عبلادي أنا وولادي أنا وولادي على فلسطين أنا وولادي فلسطين بلادي حلوة يا ما شاء الله، يا طير الطاير رايح عالديرين، بعطيك عيوني وتصير بعين الله، والله يا مسافر شعلاني هالديرين، فلسطين بلادي حلوة يا ما شاء الله. سهلها عالحيفا ويافا ولا تنسى عالرابا، وعلى هالكون السلم عالحبايب، واهلا نشامة ورجالة جوا. تغربنا وصرنا كل واحد في بلاد، وصارت حسرة شوفت غوالينا، وعقب دار العز وقعدات الجواد سكننا بخرابة ونقول زينة. العقب ما كنا منهل لكل وراد، صرنا للي ما يسوى مد ايدينا. عقب ما كنا منهل لكل وراد، صرنا للي ما يسوى نمد ايدينا. وعقب ما كنا نوقف على روس الاشهاد، نفوسنا تحت الارض صارت دفينة. وعقب ما كنا نمشي مشية سيان، انخذلنا وصار أعرج مشينا. أهلي من فارقتهم عمري نقص ما زاد، وروحي كواها الشوق ظلت حزينة. أهلي من فارقتهم عمري نقص ما زاد، وروحي كواها الشوق ظلت حزينة. خبز الغرب خبز أمريكا مالح لو بالعسل جاد، وخبز الفلسطين والأم طيب لو بس عجينة. خبز الغرب مالح لو بالعسل جاد، وخبز فلسطين والأم طيب لو بس عجينة. اشتاقت للمة الكرايب يوم العياد، اشوف عدت كل العياد وما حدا اجا علينا. قبل كان الفرح ايام العياد، اشوف اليوم بالعيد يكثر بكي. يا حسرة على الوطن، يا حسرة على الوطن العربي كله. اشوف اليوم يكثر بكينا، يا غربة ما اصعبك ما بكي عندي جلال، ويا غربة روح ارحلي من البعد ملينا. الهدهد لحيلي البعد دائم تنظل بعاد، هدهد لحيلي البعد لا تنظل بعاد، وروحي طير وهاجر الايام ماضينا. وطحت من هميش كثر ما زاد، على هونك يا دنيا كافي تحاسبين. والدنيا يا صاحبي صارت مثل جلاد، انهالت علينا ضرب وما حدا رحم بين. ننتظر منك فرج يا رب العباد، تلم الشمل ونرجع لأراضينا. الجرزين اشتقنا للبير ورام الله لعبير زيت المجد يتعلى النابلس احنا ما نتهلى دم الشهيد اضرب حلا ويا طير سلمني على جيل جايين يا تراب الوطن شايين اشتقنا الجبل عالي جبل جرزين اشتقنا نغسي مع شواطئها لا رفح والليل من حواليها أرض الخليل الله يخليها حرم إبراهيم حاميها وبالفاتحة والفلك مع ياسين جايين يا تراب الوطن جايين اشتقنا الجبل عالي جبل جرزين اشتقنا لأريحة وموزاتها لا طول كرم بطيب عنباتها عديل يا عديل تتنادى والكيل لا سر جراتا من بين لحم الدين لا مريد جايين يا تراب الوطن جايين اشتقنا الجبل عالي جبل جرزين اشتقنا لبيت ساحور وبتجالا لا بيت حنين قلوبنا ميالا طوبى سعد جو يقطع حالا والشجعية شاطئ والبريج فلوجة لا جبل يا البردانة والقصير جايين يا تراب الوطن جايين اشتقنا جبل عالي جبل جرزين جايين يا تراب الوطن جايين اشتقنا جبل عالي جبل جرزين اوف 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 والله كلمة نعم نعلنها ونسرها وبصلاة الفجر نعلنها ونسرها الشهيد ابو عمار للأمة نسر مغاب النسر إلا ونسر جاب يا باي يا باي يا باي لليش نخاف ما دام الموت على الكل ولليش نخون ما دام الوطن للكل لليش نخاف ما دام الموت على الكل ولليش نخون ما دام الوطن للكل والله تحريرك يا فلسطين تحريرك فلسطين واجب على الكل كبار صغار شياب وشباب عللكوا فيه عللوا نحفيه كان عتابه ومين جانا وسامر فيها عللكوا فيه عللوا نحفيها كان عتابه ومين جانا وسامر فيها السلك بحنيه جبر عتابه وتحيه السلك بحنيه جبر عتابه وتحيه ونخلي القارودي هلهل ويحليها خلي القارودي هلهل ويحليها علقوا فيه علقوا فيها نعتبوا الجوز فيها وين الشباب الدكة؟ بدنا الشباب الدكة تفضلوا معنا المشوار عندي خلي العالي واطيها عندي الجنة خلي العالي واطيها علي الكوفي علم اللون فيها نعتها ويجوزها
ورجعتكم عرض بالله
يعطيك العافية يمكن شكرا كمان واحدة حاضر يا حاج تكرم لنا عودة معكم إن شاء الله بعد العشاء إن شاء الله صحة وألف عافية أهلا وسهلا بكم جميعا
Delicious.
تكونوا استمتعتوا بالعشاء. بنحب نشكر مطعم البوادي على العشاء، كالعادة أكله طيب. Good evening again. I hope you enjoyed your dinner. How about Al-Bawadi and their food? Thank you, Basti family and Abu Faris, for giving us a 5-star Mediterranean cuisine in Chicago area. Now let me introduce you to Hassan. Hassan is a magnet to your money. He takes it when you fly. He takes it when you do Hajj. He takes your money with the permission of Palestinian embassy, and he takes your money when you buy fuel, soft drink, gum, or chips. Tonight he is taking it for a good cause. Hassan معانا. وأنا قبل ما أبلش الحساد I will donate 2,000 for the park.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So can I please have your attention? I need more of your attention. Not enough yet. I'm waiting. I'll give you a few more seconds, so please give me your attention. It's hard enough you can barely see me. I need you to hear me. Because this podium was not designed with me in mind. Absolutely. First of all, I want to inform you that this is a very happy occasion for me today, and it could not have been without you involved. The reason is that this is the 15th anniversary of my standing in this position as a volunteer doing the fundraising part for the United Holy Land Fund. I am also happy to be with you today, free, because last week I almost got arrested. 7 people came and no questions, they just wanted to take me. And I had to convince them I am the wrong Saad. These were Saudi security agents. They're looking for Saad al-Hariri. Now, you know the purpose of the fundraising tonight. It is obviously for student tuition, student grants in Palestine, the West Bank, and in Gaza. Normally, we always talk about how proud we are that the Palestinians have the highest rate of college graduates, the highest rate of PhDs, and so forth. But we talk about that usually in just numbers. They are just mere statistics. Last September, I was there and I some of these students who are the recipients of the grants from the United Land Fund. And I have to tell you, I was in awe. I was very proud of them. I wish I could have had with me $1 million for each one to give to them. That's how proud of them I was. These were good students, very straight A students almost, and the majority of the high grade students were females. They have armed themselves with education, with the full realization that knowledge is power. So they spare no chance to achieve as they stay up all night burning the midnight oil. They are seeking their education in spite of the occupation. You can get a 50% sort of idea by looking at the brochure, the booklets on your table. There are pictures probably of these students, and it was a great pleasure to meet them in person. Despite all the obstacles they have in their way by the Israelis, they are determined to get an education. So, we have an excellent speaker coming after me, and the time is short, and my time here is limited, so I would like to start. I want to remind you, it's $1,000 that will pay the tuition of one student for 1 year. That's a hell of a bargain. Okay, so I would like to see if somebody would be gracious enough to pay for the tuition of 10 students, $10,000. Do we have such a person? You do? That's excellent. Okay, I have a donation as follows. From Ziad Brothers, and you know them very well, $16,000, $10,000 for the students and $6,000 for orphans. Thank you, Ziad Brothers. Read it. Do I have any more besides the one they just gave me? I have $15,000 from Hajj Falah Bahi. He allocated, I'm sorry, it's more than 15, isn't it? It says $15,000 for students and $10,000 for orphans from Hajj Falah Bahi. Thank you very much. I need to see somebody come up from the audience. We have some people who have donated, but I need to see somebody from the audience. Can I get somebody to give me $5,000? Umar Zahra, $5,000. Muhammad Abdullah, $5,000. Okay, I would like 3 more $5,000. Okay, you want me to repeat the numbers twice? Well, before I go any further, anybody who is donating any amount, please fill in all your information on the envelopes that are in front of you on the table. We need all your information, otherwise it would be very confusing for us. Please make our job easy. You have these brochures with an envelope and personal information. Please give us all that information, including your telephone number. عن روح محمود ناجي من فدوى ناجي وأولادها $5,000. Okay, you got it? $5,000. Okay. Sammy Badr, $5,000. Sammy Badr, $5,000. Dr. Johar Hamdan, $5,000. Dr. Johar Hamdan, $5,000. Dr. Muhammad Al-Masri, $6,000. Dr. Muhammad Al-Masri, $6,000. Okay, I got the 5,000. I need two more 5,000s because the 6 doesn't count. Can I get two more 5,000s? Remember, it's probably about $4 a day if you buy Frappuccino or Cappuccino Blast at Starbucks. $4 times even 300 is about $1,200 a year. متبرع كريم فاعل خير $500. Anonymous متبرع كريم $3,000. المجلس الفلسطيني الأمريكي Palestinian American Council $1,000. جهاد مدللة عن روح والدي جهاد مدللة عن روح والدي $1,000. رفيق جابر $1,000. رفيق جابر $1,000. نادر الغول $2,000. نادر الغول $2,000. Okay, I need to keep the pace going, otherwise I get an inferiority complex. Okay, this while you're thinking and contemplating and writing your checks, let me just announce that Abu Samir al-Nobani gave us $20,000. We have a guest from Florida, Mr. Jamal Bland. Jamal Bland, $1,000. Just after the hurricane or with FEMA having to do with it? Okay, I'm getting nervous. We're doing 1,000s now. I want to have easier. $1,000. Can I have a few thousands? موفق إجبارة says Abu Qubtain. Is that like the right fix? Okay. موفق إجبارة $2,000. Is this MDA rug and import? MDA rug and import. Like rugs, carpets, not like toupees or anything like that. Okay, $500. MDA rug and import, $500. Shahda Abu Khalil. Shahda Abu Khalil, $1,000. Well, you go. I have nothing to do with Khalayla. Please. Abu Mishan family, $2,000. $2,000. Do they know? Okay, the next $1,000. Can you have somebody younger than these guys come and bring in these things? Somebody under 60 maybe? Khalil Abdullah, $1,000. Khalil Abdullah, $1,000. Okay, Dr. Saadi Abu Saima, $500. Dr. Saadi Abu Saima, $500. Anonymous, فاعل خير, $1,000. Dr. Sausan Asfour, dentist, correct? The best, okay, $500. Okay, we got 4 more minutes. Okay, can we do 500s now? Can we go to 500s? Not unanimous, you mean anonymous. Anonymous, okay. $500, فاعل خير, $500. And you're a PhD? Yeah. I know what PhD stands for. Prime hot dog. Amir Hnehan. Is this your name, Amir? Amir Hnehan, $500. The rest was a pledge, okay. Did you enjoy the food so far? And you know it's from Bawadi restaurant, and Bawadi restaurant appreciates that you enjoy the food, so they decided to donate $5,000. Nadia Bland, $500. Two and a half minutes, $500. Muhammad Shakir, Abu Hudayfa, $500. Okay, the next $500. 2 more minutes. We have the speaker coming right after me. Very excellent speaker. One more minute. Two minutes? Okay. By popular demand, 2 minutes. Mr. Samir Qasim. Mr. Samir Qasim, $1,000. Thank you, Pastor. Arab American Democratic Club. Is that what AADC stands for? Or This is NADC. What is it then? Okay, there's another one before. Arab American Democratic Club, $500 pledge. Nadia Murar, $200. Nadia Murar, $200. Mustafa, $200. Mustafa, $200. Green Homes. What kind of company is that? Real estate? Green Homes, $1,000. Anonymous, $300. فاعل خير, $300. عزية معالي, $100. Thank you. Sari Ibrahim from Dallas Hills, $500. Ali Hamdan, $500. Rifat Zayed, $250. Thank you. Rifat Zayed, $250. One more minute. فاعل خير, Anonymous, $200. Adam Nahan, $200. Dr. Malak Satar Abunsair. Dr. Malak, is it Malak or Malak? Which is the same? Malak? Okay, what's the difference? Angel? Thank you, I understand now. Malak Satar Abunsair, $1,000. Mr. and Mrs. Hisham Bland. Mr. and Mrs. Hisham Bland, $500. Anonymous, فاعل خير, $100. Just to give you a report, so far we have reached $135,000. My time is up, but I want to remind you that after the speech, we have an auction for a lady's gold ring. So stick around, it should be interesting. Is it diamond? This is all gold here. It's a diamond ring. We're going to be auctioning a lady's diamond ring donated by Hajj Amin Chbara after the speech. Thank you very much.
سمحتوا عشان بدنا نقدم المتحدث التعيين. لو سمحتوا بعد اذنكم في بليز. بعد اذنكم بدنا نبلش مع متحدثتنا لو سمحتوا. نرجو الهدوء وتعطونا انتباهكم شوي، واذا سمحتوا خلال تحدث المتحدثه ما حدا يحكي بعد اذنكم عشان نسمع لها. الان بدنا نقدم السيده لميس الديك، وهي ناشطه حقوقيه في مجال حقوق الانسان وعملت كثيرا في عده قضايا تهم حقوق الانسان والقضيه الفلسطينيه من خلال عملها في النشطه. بالانجليزي Ms. Lamis is a Palestinian human rights attorney, and she's based in New York, and she has diverse experience span wide range of domestic and international matters. She is a litigated Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim civil rights and criminal defense issues ranging from free speech and free worship to state repression, and defended those accused of Trump up terrorism charges. I will not talk too much about Lamis. She will deliver her speech. I will talk about herself more. Thank you, and please, can I have your attention? Be quiet, if you please. Thank you.
زي ما قلنا حتى الشوق وفوضتكم بالنسبة لنا جنة. Because by God I have to say, you are indeed a beautiful people. And what you're doing tonight is in fact the work of God, because it's the work of peace. And if you'll forgive my romanticization, ours are generally an incredible people who happen to be living in the most unfortunately interesting of times, an incredible people who survived the murder of 500,000 Palestinians under the Ottomans, who then passed their brutal rule only to be tortured and murdered still by the British colonizers. 100 years ago this year, passed the fiery torch of colonialism to the Zionist Irgun and Haganah terrorists, who even as they waged what is indeed history's most insidious form of colonialism, a colonialism that seeks not only subjugation and enslavement of the natives, but a colonialism that seeks the ethnic cleansing of the population. They get to sit in the halls of power and shape the world along, unfortunately, with Arab collaborators who participate not only in our ethnic cleansing, but in our erasure, in our historic, in our social, and in the psychological eraser of our people. So it's been said that to be colonized is to be rendered insensible. That to be colonized is to be rendered a dummy hand of the colonizer. So to have survived and to insist on liberation, to raise a hand against the colonizer under such suffocating conditions, to raise a pen against the colonizer, supported by regional and global powers, is a testament to your greatness and to our people's greatness. But we must also, unfortunately, be clear about the grim reality in which they exercise this greatness. As you might know, in the West Bank and Gaza, the Israelis have stolen upward of 80% of the Palestinian economy. Micro checkpoints armed by teenage soldiers are mushrooming across the West Bank. Settlers steal the olive harvest and torch our trees and burn our crops, while unfortunately PA coordination with Israel daily increases, and settlers take photos with the still warm bodies of our children, while kids from Brooklyn invade Palestinian homes and sleep in their still warm beds. Vulgar displays of supremacy and disregard for basic human values. In Gaza, our people survived bombing campaigns in the world's largest refugee camp, only to die of starvation and lack of water and medicine, while pink-painted Israeli fighter jets bombed desalination plants and hospitals. Meanwhile, 2/3 of you, 75% of our people, languish in refugee camps comprising the world's oldest and largest refugee population in the world, even today amidst the Syrian crisis. And if that weren't enough, if it weren't enough that they had survived this, the Palestinians survived this violence not only of the world's fourth largest military power, supported by the world's largest military power across the region. Palestinians are criminalized and they're pathologized because they're increasingly seen as an obstacle to US, Saudi, Emirati, and Israeli plans to normalize and cement Israeli and Khaliji hegemony in the region. Just days ago, the Palestinian Authority was summoned to Saudi Arabia, and we believe that they were told that they had to dismantle the last line of self-defense. The only reason that they survived the last two massacres of Gaza, that they were asked to dismantle the Qassam brigades. And by the Saudis' own words, by bin Salman's own words, all of this new restructuring of the region is meant to make the region, to make the Khalij a center of global capital, while they boycott Qatar for its, in part, its refusal to criminalize the Palestinian resistance. And it's not just in the region that Palestinians are increasingly criminalized. We see this globally, just here in the United States. How many of our people languish behind prison walls for daring to support and stand in solidarity with their own. So we gather and we assure ourselves that we are a great people, that we are resilient. But I think that we have to be strategic and understand the context in which this resilience arises. And I think the most poignant example of that is the very reason that you're here tonight, is really deconstructing the condition of Palestinians and their education. Now, as the speaker before me said, we boast, we're very proud, and I do it too. We have the highest literacy rates in the world. We have the greatest number of postgraduate degrees per capita in the world. But that conceals a grim reality. That is not the whole truth. That's not the truth of 2/3 of the Palestinian population. If you look at Lebanon, for example, and even Jordan, but in Lebanon, 500,000 Palestinian refugees in camps, they don't have access to government schools. Illiteracy rates are between 13 and 17%, double the literacy rates of Lebanon. And that's the same in Jordan, by the way. 39% of Palestinians drop out by high school. 20% drop out before high school. Add to that the fact that UNRWA's curriculum refuses to allow the education of Palestinians not only about their history and their current conditions, but even about the political positions of the people who have put them in those positions. No access to any skills, no means for self-sufficiency, no access to employment or information about their rights and how or where, never mind how, but even where to demand their rights, even as though they remain an internationally protected people who should have access. They're not even told where. And it's possible that the reason that Palestinians are dropping out so early, 59% are dropping out by high school, the majority are dropping out by high school. And it's possible that that's because they don't see any employment opportunities and they're excluded from the Lebanese economy. But let's juxtapose that against what's happening in the West Bank. I'm sorry. In the West Bank, And in Palestine, frankly, we have the highest unemployment rates of the region. We have the most rapidly shrinking economy in the world. We have one of the smallest GDPs globally. Our GDP last year was about 3.5 billion, right? But still, we've maintained the highest literacy rates, right? We've maintained the highest exam scores in the region. And amidst a strong push for neoliberalism and the NGOization of our society, and with all the corruption that comes with that, the only sector of Palestinian society that has remained sacrosanct and completely corruption-free is the Palestinian education system. Now, we look back and we consider then why, under the aegis of UNRWA, even despite the conditions, why under the aegis of UNRWA, it's important that we're reminded that up until 1994, the Israelis controlled the Palestinian curriculum. Many people don't know that. Up until 1994, Palestinians were not allowed to teach about Palestine. My father was a teacher. Him and his colleagues were in and out of Israeli dungeons, tortured and abused, simply because they refused to refrain from teaching Palestinian national history, struggle, identity, and politics. And this, I think, is the important distinction between Palestinian self-education and the education that Palestinian refugees receive under the aegis of UNRWA. They're going to schools to not be taught about the conditions under which they live. They're going to schools to be pathologized. They're going to schools to be told about all the things they can't do and all the ways that they cannot do them. Whereas in Palestine, despite the bleak economic conditions, our students are flourishing. But this should also raise another question about when I tell you that you're doing the work of God, this is no exaggeration. When I say in material conditions that you are building the force of peace, this is no exaggeration. Because let us think. There's no Palestinian economy. There's no market. There's no Palestinian market. So what is it that Palestinians are competing for when they're racing to school? When they're racing to their exams in the midst of war and despite all of these obstacles? If there is no capital to compete for, what are our students racing to schools for? And this should ring a bell and should light a fire under all of us. And I think that the answer to what they're competing for is a testament to their greatness. And it's the biggest clue to the direction that we should be taking, because I think that what they're finding in education is the possibility of a world that they are working to recreate. That what they're finding in education is freedom, not just for themselves, but freedom in the solutions to the answers to the oppression under which they're living, but under which they see others living. That I think that they're finding in their education nobility, despite the abuses and the propaganda and the media that daily tells them from Hollywood to Palestine to Saudi Arabia to the Emirates that they are an ugly, undeserving people. In education, they find the tools to build and create a life and an environment that neither depends nor supports the forces of oppression. Be those forces of oppression the Israelis, or be they the violent crying open of markets across the world. And it's truly miraculous. They're getting an education not to compete for global capital, but to situate themselves as an integral part of shaping global morality and human progress. Take it a step further. You've all watched these viral videos of what Palestinians are creating in the West Bank and Gaza. Right? In the West Bank, they're developing new agricultural technologies, building on their knowledge of the history of their ancestors' farming techniques and updating them today. They're combining this with animal and water preservation techniques to create sustainable societies under colonization and military occupation. They're producing medical technology and desalination plants and even construction development from recycled to shrapnel. Right? They're creating art from weapons. Our teachers are innovating the most progressive techniques of teaching the youth and helping them recover from trauma with nothing. They compete to create and to be beautiful, and to create an example not just for Palestine, and this is not rhetorical, but for the world of what it means to be sustainable and self-sufficient. Which brings us back to the 2/3 of the Palestinian population, to the 75% of us here who are not receiving an education past high school. When UNRWA was first started, they were tasked with giving Palestinians jobs in social works projects, which would give them skills, which were intended to help them use those skills to rebuild Palestine. Within a few years, all of those social works projects were closed. We can leave that 2/3 of the population that sits across many borders to either linger as a boiling cauldron, a disposed people, as objects and agents and subjects of violence, as the dummy hand of the colonizer, and insensible 2/3 of our population, or they can be made to be self-sufficient. They can be made to receive radical education, which they can use towards their own creation of resistance economies that can survive any sort of oppression and scarcity, which can be models for the world. They can be given education to reintegrate them, even by virtual networks, to their people in Palestine, by virtual networks to their homes and their lands and their original communities in Palestine. And I think that this is where that you come in. And when I said that this is a force of peace, that what you're doing here is the work of God, that this is a force of peace, this is not rhetorical. I'm a romantic, but not to that extent. Let's have a look at every prior armed conflict, be it civil, be it interstate, be it international. There has never been an armed conflict or a war that was resolved without first and foremost addressing the details, the time frame, the timeline, and the logistics of the return of the refugees that were created. And that's not just for the sake of the refugees. That's for the sake of regional stability. When you have refugees languishing, you have instability. And for us, regional instability is global instability. And so in every conflict, but in the Palestinian colonization, have we addressed the right to return? When we talk about Palestine, it's a matter of whether we can return, not when and how and where and how soon, but when we can return. So keeping in mind that the only way to bring stability to the region is to resolve the largest refugee population in the world, then it's also clear that it is the refugees who are the ultimate force of peace, not just for Palestine, but for the entire region and therefore for the entire globe. So it's not rhetorical to say that justice, reparations, restitution is the solution and the way to peace globally. Now the Israelis, they say and they practice violence as their way to peace, because the only obstacle between the refugees and their homes is Israeli violence. And they say that the only way that we can have peace is through violence. And when they say peace, they mean peace for Zionists. What we say, and what you do, is you say that the only way for peace is a peaceful return, that the only way for truly peaceful material conditions, even for the Zionists, is peace and return. So how do we build a force of peace when our own people, the very subjects, the very force of this peace, are languishing in the refugee camps? 59% haven't graduated high school. And this is not just in Lebanon and Jordan, but even in Mukhayyamat, Jalazon, or Kalandia. They had a survey in 2014, right? It was a project, a one-year project, where they went and they asked Palestinian refugees in the West Bank, do you know what rights you have? Do you know what the US position is on the right of Palestinians to return? Do you know what the Israeli position is on where you're allowed to go back to Europe? Do you know whether you can vote and where you can vote? And the vast majority were not able to answer this question. And this is within the West Bank, under better conditions. So the question is, how do we build a force of peace when that force of peace has been languishing, disenfranchised across the region, and not just in the region, but in our own homes? And that brings us back to what we're doing here tonight. At the beginning of this, the critical component is providing education to these most critical agents of peace in the region. And it's a way for them to provide self-sufficiency. The beautiful thing about this is what we're doing tonight. This is not charity, it's a way to end charity. It's not aid, it's a way to end aid. It's not a donation that you gave, it's an investment. It's an investment in your environment. It's an investment in your future if you want to return to a peaceful Palestine. And our future, despite our very grim reality, is actually very bright. It's very bright. Touched briefly about Saudi, Emirati, Israeli, and the US alliance and their new chess moves for the region. But if we look and we consider it in the context of history, and even just recent history, you'll see that these really are the moves of the desperate. Just like ISIS backfired on the people who created it, just like the counter-revolutions are quickly falling apart, these new plans will also boomerang much quicker than their creators imagined. And while they intended to strip the Palestinians of their last vestiges of self-defense, what I believe we'll see is what we're already seeing is more people lining up, regardless of sector, faction, or ideology, behind the resistance in a broader way that we've seen. And it will be those people who are seeking to divest us of our last means of self-defense who will soon be seeking refuge and aid. The unmasking in the region has happened far too quickly, even for the most pessimistic and scared Arabs who think that normalization is their way to go. And keep in mind, as we watch what's happening in Saudi Arabia, that for decades, they have misdirected Arab anger at the impotence and failure to liberate Palestine. They've directed it to Afghanistan, they've directed it to Chechnya, they've directed it across the region. But what happens when the planners fall, as I think we're beginning to see now, I think what will happen is we'll see the recentering of that anger where it belongs, to the heart of the issue. Recentering of Palestine and the recentering of the urgency to liberate Palestine en masse. And while our people are busy, distracted, السعودية وقطر وسوريا واليمن في بعضهم, we have nothing to worry about. The young people in the US and across Europe and across South America are happily waving the torch of Palestinian liberation and solidarity. We have nothing to worry about. Israelis have spent billions of dollars, decades of fabulations, making fables and defamations and propaganda campaigns, an arm and an army dedicated to waging lawfare in bed with every Department of Justice, state and federal, to criminalize and repress and legislate our erasure, all of which have failed. So Israelis no longer claim that they are the eternal righteous victim, right? They've had to own, they've had to boast of their role in global oppression. They've had to talk about themselves as the colonial crossroads of the world, which is what the French were during their colonization of Algeria. So it's no longer a malediction, because they say that where there's oppression, you'll find us. And they market that. That's their marketing technique to the world. Whether it's in El Salvador or Chile, or even, how wonderful, even in Weinstein's Hollywood, where you'll find the Israelis turning women and children into sexual predators, right? The ultimate propaganda arm of the Israelis and Zionists, Hollywood, has been funded and directed by Israeli Mossad agents, has it not, right? South Sudan, they're beating the war drums against Iran and now Lebanon, and spying on civil rights groups in the US. So let them revel in their descent into the heart of darkness. They own it, right? And Palestinians have daily and an unprecedented patience and peacefulness in the face of such vulgar violence, and in the nobility of their resistance, armed and otherwise, they continue to rise to the seat of global morality and human rights. And so where you find resistance to oppression, you will find Palestinians, whether they're keeping alive the boycott and divestments and strikes that were taken here in San Francisco, across the world, or keeping alive the protests in Egypt in 2011, or teaching our people in Ferguson and New York how to resist tactics, or placing themselves, not just in Palestine, on the front lines for each other, but placing themselves on the front lines in Nicaragua, fighting alongside the Sandinistas, right? In Lebanon, fighting for the liberation. So we owe it. We owe it to our people in Palestine, who in the face of death made weapons of their stomachs, who give birth at checkpoints and reproduce from behind prison's walls, who race not to accumulate dollars like we do, who race to accumulate goals, loftier goals, ideas for a better, more sustainable society that can survive the worst elements it's faced with. It's on us, we owe them to invest in their future, which is our future, to invest in our own global peace. And on us here in the United States, as I think we're watching an increasing polarization and a lot of very difficult decisions to make, I think it's on us to be sure that we remain sensible, that we are not the insensible that the colonizers would have us be, that we refrain from being the dummy hand of the colonizer, on these conditions. It's on us to remain sensible and to remain bold and to demand nothing less than total liberation. Algerians didn't say to the French, oh, we would just want to liberate Algiers and leave the countryside. The South Africans didn't say, we want Soweto, but leave Durban, you can have it. It's on us to remain sensible. It's on us to demand nothing less than full liberation. And this, and your funding tonight, is what we owe our people.
قبل ما نرحب مرة ثانية بجميل الرموني بدي أحب بس أصدقائنا في AMP American Muslim for Palestine عندهم الكونفنشن تاعهم في Thanksgiving weekend November 23rd, 24th and 25th في الحياة الجنسي جنب مطار القاهرة. For more information ampalestine.org اللي بحب يعرف أكثر عن الموضوع. والآن بدنا نرحب مطربنا الجميل جميل الرموني مع فرقة الأصدقاء للتبكي. أهلا وسهلا وتفضلوا.
خلينا نرحب فرقة الأصدقاء للتبكة إن شاء الله يكون حسن الظن. اسمع لهم كم ترحيب. أهلا وسهلا بكم جميعا. شمالي شمالي يا هوا تديري شمالي على الابواب هم تفتح شمالي. ايوه انا لصاحب الريح، انا لصاحب الريح الشمالي، عسى الله يعود صوب الاحباب ماي ماي ماي. يلا عالدبكة عالدبكة الفلسطينية وكف حي فلسطين. بدي كف فلسطيني كف فلسطيني حلو. الله حلو. يا زلمة فضلوا الناس اللي عم تبكي، نخلي بهالليل النبي يحكي يحكي يا عين. يا زلمة فضلوا المفتوح تبكي، نخلي بهالليل النبي يحكي يحكي يا عين. سمعتني يقول وصلت بمكي، عصوت الدبكي والنحل فرحنا. ايوه شباب الزكي ايوه ايوه. يا طير طاير فوق البرية
عاشت
العافيه والف عافيه. شكرا. بدنا كف حلو كمان، كف حلو هي والكف. رجال فيها شي مثل عربان، رؤوسهم مرفوعة في العلالي، شباب فلسطين أقسى من الصوام، واشهد يا زمن ودون في السجال. ومنساك يا القدس يا درة البلدان، واسمك فلسطين أعلى من العالي. يوم تنادينا يا الوطن تلقانا هالشبان عحدودك نضحي بالغوالي. خلينا مع بعض نغني. لا 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 بدنا صوت 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 فلسطين. لا 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 والله مش سامع مش سامع لسه هاي مش فلسطين هاي مش فلسطين. لك اسمك يا بلاد الشمس ما بتغيب لا غالي ولا ولاد على حبي حبيب. اسمك يا بلاد الشمس ما بتغيب لا غالي ولا ولاد على حبك حبيب. وانت هيامك يا بلدي
النعم حلية هلا وهلا بك يا هلا وربع الفلسطينية وصلنا الساحة شباب وصلنا الساحة والله يمسيكم بالخير ضيوف النعم حلية هلا وهلا بك يا هلا وربع الفلسطينية الموجودين وعلى الشمال وعلى اليمين حي شعبك فلسطين في ساحات وميدانين وانا بحي الموجودين على الشمال وعلى اليمين حي شعبك فلسطين في ساحات وميدانين بسمع الصوت البارود وشفت السما مروية ولا تحصل السما هذول فلسطينيين وكل بسمع الصوت البارود أنا شفت السما مضوية ولا تحسب السما رعود هذول فلسطينيين واضرب عالم سكستين أي وحدة شعب الجبارين لك ما بين اللوم بالليل نتحدى